September 15, 2021, the day Australia executed the most audacious strategic pivot in modern history. With one announcement, Canberra torpedoed a $90 billion French submarine deal, secured nuclear-powered submarines from America and Britain, and sent a message to Beijing that reverberated through every military planning office in China. The era of Chinese intimidation is over. This wasn't just a weapons deal. This was Australia declaring itself a Pacific superpower and choosing to fight rather than submit. Welcome to the Doctrine of War. Today we're dissecting AUKUS, the Australia-United Kingdom-United States Security Pact that represents the most significant military alliance since NATO itself. This isn't about buying submarines. This is about technology transfer that gives Australia capabilities reserved for America's closest allies, about industrial integration that makes Australian defense independent from Chinese pressure, and about strategic positioning that turns Australia from a regional player into a genuine threat to Chinese naval dominance. AUKUS is the masterstroke that changed everything, and Beijing knows it. The strategic genius. Why AUKUS is more than submarines. Let's start with what makes AUKUS genuinely unprecedented in the history of military alliances. Nuclear submarine technology is the most jealously guarded secret in modern warfare. More restricted than stealth aircraft, more controlled than ballistic missiles, more protected than nuclear weapons themselves. The physics of nuclear propulsion, the metallurgy of reactor vessels, the engineering of silent running systems. This knowledge represents decades of research and hundreds of billions in investment. Countries don't share this lightly. The United States has shared nuclear submarine technology exactly once in 65 years, with the United Kingdom in 1958 under the Mutual Defense Agreement. That's it. One country, one exception for over 6 decades. Britain earned that exception by being America's closest ally through World War II, by sharing nuclear weapons research, and by proving absolute reliability through the Cold War. Then came AUKUS, and suddenly Australia became the second country ever to receive this technology. Think about what that means. The United States looked at its global alliances, Japan, South Korea, NATO partners in Europe, and chose Australia as the only country worthy of this transfer. Not Germany with its industrial might. Not Japan with its technological sophistication. Not South Korea with its advanced shipbuilding. Australia. A country of 26 million people on the opposite side of the planet that proved through decades of alliance loyalty and operational competence that it could be trusted with America's crown jewels. This wasn't a transactional decision. This was strategic recognition that Australia occupies the single most critical geographic position for containing Chinese expansion, and that Australian success directly serves American interests in ways that no other partnership can match. The submarines are the mechanism, but the real story is what AUKUS represents. A fundamental deepening of the Anglo-American alliance to include Australia as a full member of the inner circle. But AUKUS isn't just about submarines, and this is where the masterstroke becomes clear. The agreement has 2 pillars. Pillar 1 is nuclear-powered submarines, 8 SSN-AUKUS boats that will make Australia the 7th nation to operate nuclear-powered submarines and give the Royal Australian Navy capabilities that outclass every other Indo-Pacific force except the United States. Pillar 2 has advanced capabilities including hypersonic weapons, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, electronic warfare, and undersea technology. Pillar 2 is arguably more significant than Pillar 1 because it creates permanent technological and industrial integration between Australia, Britain, and America. When these 3 countries collaborate on developing hypersonic missiles, they share research data, manufacturing techniques, and operational concepts. When they work together on quantum computing for military applications, Australian scientists contribute to projects that will define 21st century warfare. When they coordinate on cyber capabilities, Australian intelligence agencies plug into the most sophisticated offensive and defensive cyber networks on Earth. This integration makes Australia's defense industrial base fundamentally different from every other American ally. Japan and South Korea buy American weapons but don't participate in developing them. European NATO countries collaborate with America on some projects but remain separate on others. Australia through AUKUS becomes a co-developer, a full partner in the research and manufacturing that creates next-generation military capability. That's not a customer relationship, that's family. If you're starting to grasp why AUKUS represents strategic genius rather than just a submarine purchase, hit that like button and subscribe to Doctrine of War. We're breaking down the defense partnerships reshaping global power, and your support keeps this analysis coming. The AUKUS timing is the first element of brilliance. Australia signed the French submarine contract in 2016 for conventional diesel-electric boats. By 2021, That program was years behind schedule, billions over budget, and increasingly irrelevant to the strategic environment. China had spent those 5 years militarizing the South China Sea, threatening Taiwan, conducting gray zone warfare against neighbors, and demonstrating that conventional deterrence wasn't working. Australia needed capability that could genuinely threaten Chinese naval operations, not submarines that would be obsolete before they entered service. Canceling the French deal was ruthless but necessary. The $5 billion cancellation penalty was worth paying to acquire technology that's actually relevant to deterring China. France was furious. President Macron recalled the French ambassador and accused Australia of betrayal. But French anger was strategic theater. Paris knew the attack-class submarines were troubled and that Australia needed better options. The real French concern was losing a lucrative contract, not Australian security. Equally important was AUKUS, geopolitical signaling. By choosing nuclear submarines with American and British support, Australia made an unambiguous declaration. We are aligned with the Anglo-American world, we are committed to deterring China, and we will acquire whatever capabilities necessary to defend our interests regardless of who it offends. That clarity matters enormously in international politics where ambiguity invites aggression. China's reaction confirmed that AUKUS hit the mark. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian called it extremely irresponsible and accused the three countries of having a Cold War mentality. Chinese state media published dozens of articles denouncing AUKUS as destabilizing and provocative. Chinese military analysts wrote papers on countering Australian nuclear submarines. This wasn't diplomatic posturing. This was genuine alarm from Beijing that Australia had just acquired capability that fundamentally changes Chinese operational planning. The nuclear proliferation argument that China raised was transparently disingenuous. Australia isn't acquiring nuclear weapons. The submarines use sealed reactors with highly enriched uranium fuel that's never accessed during the boat's operational life. Australia remains fully compliant with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and has agreed to robust International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards. But China pushed the proliferation narrative internationally because it was the only argument that might generate opposition to AUKUS among countries concerned about nuclear technology spread. It didn't work. Most countries understood that AUKUS was a response to Chinese aggression, not unprovoked militarization. Southeast Asian nations quietly supported AUKUS because they want stronger Australian capability to balance China. Japan explicitly endorsed AUKUS. India welcomed it. Even France, after initial anger, resumed normal relations with Australia within months. The international consensus was clear. China's behavior justified AUKUS. The industrial dimension reveals another layer of strategic genius. Rather than simply buying submarines from America or Britain, Australia negotiated a deal where submarines are constructed in Australia using Australian workers with technology transferred to Australian industry. The first boats will be Virginia-class submarines built in America and delivered to Australia in the early 2030s, but even these will have Australian personnel involved in construction as part of the workforce training program. The subsequent SSN-AUKUS boats will be built in Adelaide, South Australia, creating thousands of jobs and establishing sovereign capability. This matters because it makes Australia's military capability independent of foreign supply chains during crises. If conflict erupts and global trade collapses, Australia can maintain and eventually build its own submarines rather than depending on deliveries from America or Britain that might be delayed or diverted. This sovereign capability is strategically priceless and was a core Australian negotiating objective. Technology transfer goes far beyond submarine construction. Australia is learning nuclear reactor operation, advanced metallurgy, acoustic dampening, weapons integration, and submarine tactics from the two top submarine forces in the world. Australian naval personnel are embedding with American and British submarine crews right now, learning operations, maintenance, and combat tactics. Australian engineers are working in American and British shipyards, gaining expertise in nuclear submarine construction. This knowledge transfer creates a permanent capability that will benefit Australian defence for generations. The strategic geography that AUKUS exploits is the second element of brilliance. Australia sits astride the sea lanes connecting the Pacific and Indian Oceans, the exact routes that Chinese naval forces must use to break out of the first island chain and threaten global commerce. Nuclear submarines operating from Australian bases in Perth and the East Coast can patrol these waters indefinitely, holding Chinese vessels at risk throughout their operational areas. The range and endurance of nuclear submarines transforms Australian naval strategy from coastal defence to forward deterrence. The Collins-class diesel-electric submarines are capable boats but limited by range and patrol duration. They can defend Australian waters but struggle to operate effectively in the South China Sea or Taiwan Strait for extended periods. Nuclear submarines have no such limitations. An SSN-AUKUS boat can deploy from Perth, transit to the South China Sea, conduct a 90-day patrol entirely submerged and return home. A mission profile that's simply impossible for conventional submarines. This persistent presence forces China to assume Australian submarines are always watching, always tracking, always ready to strike. That uncertainty is incredibly valuable because it complicates every Chinese operational plan. Chinese admirals planning a Taiwan invasion must account for the possibility that Australian submarines are lurking along their approach routes. Chinese naval commanders escorting aircraft carriers must maintain anti-submarine warfare vigilance constantly. This psychological pressure and operational burden degrades Chinese effectiveness even before any shooting starts. The multi-domain masterstroke. AUKUS beyond the submarines. Now let's examine the broader strategic dimensions of AUKUS that make it a true masterstroke rather than just an impressive weapons acquisition. The genius of AUKUS is that it solves multiple Australian strategic problems simultaneously while creating new capabilities that compound over time. This is multidimensional strategic thinking at its finest. Problem 1 was capability. Australia needed military capability that could genuinely threaten Chinese forces and impose unacceptable costs on Chinese aggression. Nuclear submarines achieve this by giving Australia the ability to sink Chinese naval vessels, threaten Chinese sea lanes, and operate in contested waters that conventional forces couldn't safely access. 8 SSN-AUKUS submarines represent more striking power than most entire navies, and they'll be among the most capable attack submarines on the planet. Problem 2 was alliance credibility. Australia needed to demonstrate absolute commitment to the American alliance and reassure Washington that Australia would be a reliable partner in any Taiwan contingency. AUKUS achieves this by accepting American nuclear technology, integrating Australian forces into American operational concepts, and signaling willingness to acquire capabilities specifically designed for high-intensity warfare against China. The political courage required to cancel the French deal and face Chinese pressure proves Australian resolve. Problem 3 was industrial sovereignty. Australia needed to reduce dependence on foreign suppliers and build domestic capability to sustain military forces during extended conflicts. AUKUS achieves this through technology transfer, local construction, and workforce development that creates an Australian defence industrial base capable of maintaining advanced systems independently. This transforms Australia from a military consumer into a military producer. Problem 4 was strategic autonomy. Australia needed capabilities and options that allow independent action rather than complete dependence on American decisions. Nuclear submarines achieve this by giving Australia power projection capability that doesn't require American permission or support to operate. Australia can conduct submarine operations in its own national interest, making autonomous strategic decisions backed by genuine capability. Problem 5 was regional leadership. Australia needed to demonstrate to Southeast Asian nations and Pacific Island countries that it's a serious military power worthy of their partnership rather than just an American proxy. AUKUS achieves this by positioning Australia as one of only 7 nations with nuclear-powered submarines and as an equal partner in the most exclusive military technology alliance on Earth. That status commands respect and attention. The hypersonic weapons development under AUKUS Pillar 2 addresses another critical capability gap. China has deployed hypersonic missiles that can strike targets at speeds exceeding Mach 5, making them extremely difficult to intercept. These weapons threaten American aircraft carriers, Japanese air bases, and Australian naval vessels. AUKUS creates a trilateral program to develop both hypersonic offensive weapons and defenses against them, ensuring Australia isn't left vulnerable to Chinese technological advantages. The quantum computing collaboration sounds like science fiction but has immediate military applications. Quantum computers can break current encryption systems, optimize logistics and targeting calculations, and process vast amounts of sensor data in real time. Whoever achieves quantum supremacy first gains decisive advantages in intelligence, command and control, and weapons optimization. AUKUS ensures Australia participates in this research rather than falling behind Chinese or Russian advances. Artificial intelligence integration creates combat systems that can process information and make decisions faster than human operators. AI-enabled air defenses can track hundreds of threats simultaneously and engage them at speeds humans cannot match. AI-powered electronic warfare can adapt to enemy jamming in milliseconds. AI-assisted submarine operations can analyze acoustic data and identify targets more accurately than conventional sonar operators. AUKUS shares this AI development across all three countries, multiplying the benefits of individual research programs. The cyber warfare dimension is perhaps most significant in day-to-day operations. China conducts constant cyber attacks against Australian government networks, defense contractors, universities, and critical infrastructure. These attacks steal intellectual property, gather intelligence, and position cyber weapons for potential wartime disruption. AUKUS creates coordinated cyber defenses and offensive capabilities that allow Australia to benefit from American and British cyber expertise. Both countries operate some of the world's most sophisticated cyber warfare organizations. The undersea technology collaboration focuses on autonomous underwater vehicles, advanced sonar systems, submarine detection methods, and underwater communications. The ocean depths are becoming a critical military domain where sensors, weapons, and platforms operate far from human control. AUKUS ensures Australia remains at the cutting edge of undersea warfare technology rather than falling behind Chinese advances in this domain. The electronic warfare integration addresses China's massive investment in jamming, spoofing, and disrupting allied communications and sensors. Modern warfare is fought across the electromagnetic spectrum, where control of radar, communications, and data links determines who wins. AUKUS shares electronic warfare technology that allows Australian forces to operate in highly contested electromagnetic environments and disrupt Chinese sensors and communications. The three-country integration creates redundancy and resilience that makes the alliance system far stronger than bilateral relationships. If America faces multiple crises simultaneously, say Taiwan and Europe, Britain can surge support to Australia. If Britain is distracted by European security, America and Australia continue collaboration. If Australia faces regional challenges, American and British capability backs Australian operations. This triangular structure is inherently more stable and capable than hub-and-spoke alliances. The interoperability achieved through AUKUS means Australian, American, and British forces can operate as a unified whole rather than separate national contingents. When Australian submarines conduct operations, they can receive targeting data from American satellites, coordinate with British surveillance aircraft, and share intelligence through common networks. This integration multiplies combat effectiveness far beyond what individual forces could achieve operating independently. The deterrence signaling is the most important intangible benefit of AUKUS. Every Chinese war plan for Taiwan or Southeast Asian aggression must now account for Australian nuclear submarines operating in contested waters. Every Chinese assessment of American resolve must factor in British and Australian commitment to Indo-Pacific security. Every Chinese calculation of military advantage must discount Allied technological superiority in submarines, hypersonics, cyber, and AI. This changes the strategic mathematics in ways that make Chinese aggression less likely to succeed. The timeline advantages Australia critically. The first American Virginia-class submarines deployed to Australia in the early 2030s, exactly the period when China might attempt to seize Taiwan before the strategic window closes. The full fleet of 8 SSN-AUKUS submarines became operational through the 2040s and 2050s, the period when China's demographic decline and economic challenges made sustained great power competition more difficult. AUKUS provides capability when Australia needs it most. The diplomatic flexibility that AUKUS creates is underappreciated. Because Australia acquires capabilities that genuinely threaten Chinese interests, it can negotiate from strength rather than weakness. Chinese economic coercion becomes less effective when Australia can credibly threaten Chinese maritime trade. Chinese military pressure generates less compliance when Australia possesses the capability to impose costs. This shifts the diplomatic balance in ways that protect Australian sovereignty. Regional ripple effects amplify AUKUS benefits. After Australia announced AUKUS, Japan increased defense spending and revised its security strategy. South Korea accelerated its own submarine programs. The Philippines strengthened security ties with America. Indonesia expressed interest in acquiring submarines. The demonstration effect of Australian boldness encouraged other countries to resist Chinese pressure and invest in their own capabilities. The economic dimension shouldn't be ignored. AUKUS creates thousands of high-skilled jobs in shipbuilding, engineering, software development, and advanced manufacturing. The $368 billion price tag is spread over 30 years and much of it flows to Australian workers and companies. This investment builds industrial capability that has civilian applications. The same technologies used in nuclear submarines apply to civilian nuclear power, advanced manufacturing, and technology sectors. The generational aspect of AUKUS ensures Australian security for decades. The submarines will operate until the 2080s. The technology relationships established through AUKUS will persist for generations. The industrial capabilities created will benefit Australian defence indefinitely. This isn't a short-term fix. This is building foundations for Australian power that will last beyond our lifetimes. China's inability to prevent AUKUS reveals the limits of Chinese coercive power. Despite economic pressure, diplomatic protests, and propaganda campaigns, Beijing couldn't stop three democracies from making a sovereign decision in their national interests. This demonstration of Chinese impotence encourages other countries to stand firm against Chinese pressure, knowing that Beijing's bark is worse than its bite. The strategic patience embedded in AUKUS is masterful. Australia doesn't need submarines next year to deter China. It needs them in the 2030s and beyond, when China's power peaks and the risk of conflict is highest. By committing now to a decades-long program, Australia signals that it's prepared for long-term competition rather than seeking quick fixes. This steadiness is psychologically important because it demonstrates resolve that cannot be shaken by short-term Chinese pressure. The Anglo-American solidarity that AUKUS represents is the deepest expression of alliance in modern history. Britain chose to participate in AUKUS despite having no treaty obligations to Australia and despite facing its own security challenges in Europe. America chose to share its most sensitive technology despite no existential threat forcing its hand. Australia chose to invest its defense budget for a generation in this partnership despite enormous costs. These were choices made by democracies in their national interest, but also in recognition of shared values and shared threats. The final element of AUKUS brilliance is that it's scalable and expandable. The framework exists to add new capabilities, new technologies, and potentially new partners. Japan has expressed interest in participating in certain AUKUS Pillar 2 programs. Other countries might join specific initiatives. The alliance architecture is flexible enough to grow as threats evolve and opportunities emerge. AUKUS is Australia's masterstroke because it simultaneously solves immediate capability gaps, builds long-term strategic advantages, strengthens alliance relationships, creates industrial sovereignty, and signals to China that Australian resistance to coercion is permanent and backed by world-class military capability. Every element reinforces others in a strategy that's greater than the sum of its parts. China bet that Australia would choose economic dependency over strategic autonomy. Beijing calculated that threats and pressure would force Australian compliance. Chinese strategists assumed Australia would remain a secondary power content with American protection. AUKUS proved all these assumptions catastrophically wrong. Australia chose to fight rather than submit. And through AUKUS, Australia acquired the capability to make that fight genuinely costly for Chinese aggression. That's not just smart strategy, that's a masterstroke that changes the balance of power for generations. Thanks for watching Doctrine of War. If this breakdown of AUKUS strategic genius was valuable, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell for more in-depth military analysis. Drop a comment with your take on how AUKUS reshapes Indo-Pacific security long-term. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.